Welcome, friends, back to Dominant Mets Nation. I'm going to ask you this question. Listen up. How many of you would like Ketel Marte on the 2026 New York Mets roster for next year? I want you to drop a comment and let me know. And now we're going to talk about Ketel Marte and a possibility of him coming to the New York Mets. We're going to weigh the positives. We are going to weigh the risk. What does Marte to the Mets look like? What is the trade package going to look like? Because according to Bob Nightingale, the D-backs are very motivated to trade Marte. But only for a serious return. So again, if you trade for him, there has to be some serious people, some serious prospects. Zachary Reimer of Bleacher Report, he named the Mets as a top landing spot for Marte, citing the Mets obviously have that payroll, we have the prospect depth, and we are a win now team. Folks, that is very, very important. Things can happen in the future. Things can happen in 2027, 2028, 2029, and 2030. I know Marte's got a 6-year contract, but Ketel Marte, nonetheless, is the best second baseman in baseball. And if you think there's somebody better, all right, top 3. Very talented player, nonetheless. So, it's a very intriguing option. Very, very intriguing. So, again, let's kind of deep dive this. But before we get going, as always, if you can do the good stuff, please support the channel. Hit that like button. Subscribe. Would love you to join the channel. Join the Dominant Mets Nation family. I would love that. And if you have any commentary, I always enjoy to read the comments. Let me know down below. What do you feel? We know right now the Mets are in a very big transition. I mean, think about it. You hear so many things on the table. Mets, Diaz, Alonso, we already know, may not be on the team next year. It's just a fact of reality. They are free agents. Another team can blow us out of the water, or, Alonso or Diaz could just choose to walk. You just never know. Senga, Nimmo, two of our stalwarts, our ace that we thought was going to head our rotation, is rumored in many different trade scenarios. Brandon Nimmo, a guy that we thought could potentially be here until 2030, 2031, he's on the block. Jeff McNeil, he's in the last year of his contract. Nonetheless, the cornerstones of this franchise that have been supporting this team for the last 4 or 5 years look like they may not be here. So we know this. You need stability, you need talent. A guy like Ketel Marte is a guy that has all the talent in the world. And folks, this guy, I've heard that he's injury prone, but he's been very, very reliable as of late. He really has. I mean, last year, 556 plate appearances, 28 home runs, 72 RBIs, 4.4 WAR. Not only is he a home run hitter, guy is hits for average. That's what I like about him. 283 this year, 292 last year, 376 on base, 517 slug. He's a switch hitter. Silver Slugger winner this year, Silver Slugger winner last year. The guy hits the ball hard too. I mean, not only does he make contact, he hit a ball this year 119.6 miles per hour. So he hit a ball 120 miles per hour. And if you look at his career, every single year from 2018 to 2025, he's hitting the ball harder and harder in terms of his max exit velocity. So, I mean, that's pretty interesting. That is something interesting. His expected batting average was in the 96th percentile, slug 94th percentile. He's a guy that there's a lot of things to like about him. Also, I like that he's a disciplined hitter. He walks. He doesn't strike out a lot. I mean, folks, a home run hitter who has a high average, who walks, doesn't strike out a lot. He's a switch hitter, very versatile, could play the outfield, second base. Could play center, could play left. I mean, this guy, there's a lot to love about Ketel Marte. There's certainly a lot to love about Ketel Marte. So again, as I'm talking, let me know what you are thinking about them. Versatile, like I said, play second, play center. He can DH. A lot of people can DH. Hard hit rate is very, very good. He's an above average base runner. He's been a very elite in the WAR, wins above replacement. I mean, he's been ranking in the top 10 among position players in the last couple years. And he also, again, he creates stability. I said there's going to be a lot of change. And again, if you trade away a Nimmo, everybody's saying he's got a long-term contract. He does have a long-term contract, folks. He just signed a 6-year contract last year, I believe a little over $90 million. So 6 years, a little over $90 million. Very, very reasonable contract. He signed through age 36. So if you look at a lot of these players on a Ketel Marte's level, his echelon, a lot of those guys are signed till age 40. So this guy's only signed through age 36. And not only is he signed through age 36, he's signed at a very, very reasonable cost for those numbers. I mean, think about what you're going to have to pay probably a Bellinger, right? You're going to have to pay Bellinger double this guy. You're going to have to pay Bellinger probably $30+ million, around $30 million. Ketel Marte in 2026 is making $15 million. He's making $15 million, and he has a 5.5 incentive, so it can go up by $5 million. But still, that's $20 million. And in 2027, he's making $12 million. And again, he has incentives that could take the contract up by $5 million. But for that production, I mean, $17, $20 million is peanuts. Then when we get to 2028, 29, and 30, we're talking about years down the road, and MLB, we know how things change in a dime. So a $20, $25 million ball player in 2029, 2030 is going to look more and more like, I don't want to say peanuts, but more and more like a very respectable salary. And then I hear a lot about, well, he has the player option for 2031. The player option when he's 37 years old is for $11.5 million. I mean, let's not let any of this get in the way of 2026. And that's what I want us to all focus on, the here and the now. The here and the now. And that doesn't mean get stupid with prospects. I mean, we have to get, basically what Stearns did last trade season at the deadline. He traded a lot of guys that had descending prospect value. Blade Tidwell, Drew Gilbert, if they were in this year's Mets farm system, they would be a lot further down the Mets rankings. So, again, you have to be smart. If there's players that you kind of foresee as going not in the direction that you predicted, and maybe Arizona, okay, they're a little higher on those guys, then there's a fit. So, there has to be a fit. There really has to be a fit, especially when Arizona has already mandated that, they are looking for a monumental package. But again, my perspective, your perspective may be different. I want to take advantage of the here and the now because I don't know 2027, 2028. God forbid Soto has an injury, Lindor has an injury, and Lindor's in already headed into his mid-30s, 32 years old. So again, the here and the now is here and now. And I like us to be very, very aggressive in 2024. I think we had a huge missed opportunity. Stearns was still in his his infancy as being a president. And I think that really prohibited him and held him back from making that big trade at the 2024 deadline, which would have really helped us, really catapulted that team to the next level. Think about that. We were 2 games short of the World Series. If we would have gotten a legit pitcher in 2024 at the deadline, that could have made all the difference. And even last year, if we would have gotten a Garrett Crochet or we got another talented pitcher, that could have been the difference of making the playoffs. And all you got to do is get in. Toronto Blue Jays, great job getting hot at the right time, assessing and putting the right group of guys. That's all it takes. Everybody's like, no, we gotta catch up to the Dodgers and we gotta put a team together like the Dodgers. No, every team is different. Every team is unique. You're not going to have, they have the best player in the world, Shohei Ohtani. They have a different team than ours. We are going to build a very talented team. We have one of the best players in the world, Juan Soto, one of the best two-way players in the world, Francisco Lindor. We have a lot of talent to build around. We have a lot of young up-and-coming players, Nolan McLean, but again, you can't just build a staff around, you could start building staff, but you can't just focus, hey, we got a great staff because we have Nolan McLean. No, we need 3-4 Nolan McLeans in that rotation. Again, a guy gets injured, guy is overworked. That's it. We are a team. So we have to build a team. And a guy like Ketel Marte is just one piece. So again, that's where I'm like, okay, that's one of the risks. That's one of the risks. Putting that package together that doesn't compromise another part of the team. Okay, and here's the deal. I mean, and it would most certainly take a top 5 prospect. And a lot of people are saying, well, Jet Williams, and then you put a couple mid-level prospects. The thing with that is, okay, I can get on board with that because if you have Ketel Marte here for 4 or 5 years, is Jet Williams going to be a Ketel Marte? I mean, well, I'd be hard-pressed to believe that he could be that good. But hey, you never know. You just never know. But you have a guarantee with Marte. But here's the deal. If you trade away Jet Williams in the Marte trade, then you can't utilize him for Tariq Skubal or another top echelon pitcher. So that is something that you really do have to weigh. So again, recapping that, Marte is signed 6-year, and I'm sorry, I messed up on the contract. It's a 6-year, $116 million contract. I said $90 million, but all right, 6 years, $116.5 million contract. Again, he has the limited no trade clause, and in 2026. Again, he has the 10-5 rights kicking in, meaning that he will be an MLB player for 10 years and he will be with the D-backs for 5 consecutive years. So that means he gets upgraded to a no trade clause. So once 2026 begins, the season begins, then the D-backs have a much harder time trading him. So again, that is another thing to consider. Marte, he's not going to be a rental. He's going to be a guy who can be a cornerstone for your team. And, 32 is not that old. I mean, I'd say, probably 3-4 of those years would probably be pretty competitive. He hasn't shown any signs of declining. That's also another thing. He's actually shown the opposite. He's actually shown, acceleration, and he actually has shown growth. He's an impact bat, and he's a controllable contract who fits multiple positions. Now, again, I think the Mets love players like that. They love players that they can move around the diamond, and they love players that, he can move different spots in the lineup as well. And, you could say this, he's exactly the bat they're missing. The Mets right now, they are missing one thing in their lineup. They are missing a consistent bat. Yes, they've had a lot of bats with power, pop, but this is an average on-base guy as well. He's a consistent switch hitter, extra base machine. Who can hit in the 2-hole? Who can hit in the cleanup? 5-hole? Marte solves that instantly. He also gives you Alonso insurance. Not that he's a power hitter like Alonso, but there's also more than one way to score runs. He lengthens the lineup. He takes pressure off of Alonso if Alonso is here again. He gives protection to Francisco Lindor, although you had Juan Soto there to do that. But again, he gives protection to another big bat. Immediately becomes a top 3 hitter on the team. And, some people are saying, well, maybe he's not a top 3 hitter. Well, again, I mean, your lineup becomes that good when you have Lindor, when you have Soto, if you get Pete back, if you add a Bellinger and you add a Marte. I mean, like literally, you become a gauntlet and you become that much harder for teams to shut you down. I mean, that's what I guess really hurt us in August, in June, July, when we struggled, the lineup was very inconsistent. We struck out way too much. And I already went over that this guy doesn't strike out. He's not a big strikeout guy. He does strike out, but he's not a big strikeout guy. He's a guy who gets on base. He does it all, really. He really does it all. And the contract, again, the contract control, you have control over him the next couple of years. You don't have to worry about replacing that. You can have more questions answered with, okay, now we got to worry about third base and possibly first base, but now you got Beatty at third. And then you have more clarity. All right, now Mauricio, you have trade chips on the block. All right, now there is more answers than questions. And again, that contract is pretty good value in my opinion. Good value in my opinion. I think for a big market team, that contract is a steal. Okay. Now, let's go over some risks because I've been talking about a lot of positives, and again, I mentioned some risks. And then I'm going to go over some of the trade package. I'll talk more about the trade package. But the injury history is this. So the Marte has had hamstring problems, right? It's been in the past, but he's had hamstring problems. Anybody who's had tight hamstrings, a torn hamstring, it tends to linger once in a while. And also it takes you longer to warm up. And anytime you commit to a long-term contract with an athletic player like Marte, there is risk, and that does compound. Now, according to Arizona, the prospect cost will be huge. We already spoke about the possibility of giving up a Jet Williams. I mean, how are we feeling about that? And if not a Jet Williams, it's probably going to be a top 5 prospect. So if you look at the Mets' top 5, or maybe top 6, top 7, I mean, would you be willing to give up a Jonah Tong plus for him? It's going to be, top 5, 2 top 10s. It's going to hurt. It's really going to hurt. It's not going to be cheap. It's not going to be simple. It's not going to be painless. It's going to have to be one of those trades where it hurts both teams, but then in a year or two, when you look back at it, you're going to have to say, you know what? Stearns made a good move. Marte brought us to this level. The prospects we gave up, okay, all right, not bad. It's kind of like this is what I would have wished. Last year, I would have wished in the Garrett Crochet sweepstakes, maybe we would have Sproat was highly valued at the time. If we would have included a Sproat, maybe a Vientos. Vientos was coming off of that magical first year. His value was at an all-time high. All right, you know what? You trade him off that, even though we were all attached. He does have the defensive limitations, but the Chicago White Sox like Vientos, and he was coming off of that, and he had 5 years of control. So, if you had a little more foresight, you could do Vientos, you could have done Sproat, and maybe if they were looking for a Jet Williams. But the thing is, you would have got Garrett Crochet. You would have gotten your ace for their next 5, 6, 7 years. So again, and then you would have had to give up for Vientos. That would have been the guy. But we saw Vientos' value actually dipped this year. All right. So, I mean, the thing is, your leverage that you have with the D-backs right now is the threat of Marte getting to that 10-5 status. The 10-5 status means that he can block a trade to anyone. He has that no trade. So, I mean, like right now, I mean, that's your best thing. Like, okay, here's my package right now. My package in 6 months is not going to get any better, but Marte has the ability to block a trade. So it's going to become a lot more difficult for the D-backs to maneuver. So that is your one saving grace if you are from the New York package. I mean, if you are from looking at from the New York Mets perspective. Okay, so again, let me look at. I put some packages together. I put 3. Let's see. I wrote them down here. So package 1. And I labeled them. So package 1, I named it the fair and balanced deal. So the Mets would receive, you could write this down if you want. Actually, I apologize. I actually changed some of the package. Okay, so this is the one where I put that I kind of think that would hurt Mets fans. So I actually put that. I think the D-backs would accept this. I actually probably know the D-backs would accept this, but Mets fans wouldn't accept this. Now, would you do this if you had to get it done? Mets receive Ketel Marte. D-backs receive Jonah Tong, Carson Benj, and a lower tier pitching prospect. So a pitching prospect, maybe 20 to 30 out of the Mets top 30 prospects. So if and you're hearing the D-backs want a mega package. So this is what I put together, and that is 2 top 5 prospects, folks. 2 top 5 prospects. Honestly, I put my answer, if it cost this, my answer would lean towards no, because Carson Benj is somebody that I have penciled in for the future, and you're giving up so my answer to this is no. But like, what do you think? If this is the hands down cost, we want 2 top 5 prospects. If you don't want to put Carson Benj in there, you give me Jonah Tong and you give me Jet Williams. Is that something you'd be willing to do? Okay, so you know that's what some of the people are saying. Another package, we have a little lesser, Jet Williams. Then I have a top 15 prospects, so Jet Williams, and I actually have Jet Williams and then 2 top 15 prospects. So it's built around Jet Williams and then 2 top 15 prospects, and then I have this as I would do it. I would do it for Jet Williams and 2 top 15 prospects. So the first trade package, I'm a no on. Second trade package, I would do it. And the third trade package, I actually included some major leaguers, like Brett Beatty, Mark Vientos, and then 1 top 5 prospect. So if you give up, if you let's just map it out here. So you give up a Jet Williams, and then you give up a Mark Vientos, and then a top 15 prospect. So, I mean, here's the deal. It's going to hurt. It's really going to hurt. And I think that's the hardest part of it. But that's for Stearns to work out. Now, if Stearns could work it out, and I'm assuming he could work out the prospect situation where it's not going to kill us, and then we also have to anticipate how are we going to acquire top starting pitching. So if this is going to hurt us from acquiring those top starters, I got to say, hey, I got to back away, because of the fact that I think the Mets, through their system, we can get talent up the middle, maybe not of the echelon and the talent of a Ketel Marte, but I'm looking at it like that. Chips, we can't waste chips that'll prevent us from getting top flight pitching in this trade package. But if we can do it all, and we can avoid giving up a lot of those top flight prospects, or maybe just give up one and then finagle the package that way, that's where Stearns has to work his magic. But I looked at it. If we can have wanting Ketel Marte in this team is a no-brainer for me. 2026, he makes this team better in so many different ways. He's that versatile player. He's almost like that Bellinger player, folks. I mean, he is almost like Bellinger. That's why I wanted Bellinger. He's a versatile player. He's a high average player who can hit home runs. He can play multiple positions. He can run the bases. He can play solid defense. That's what Ketel Marte is. That's why I want Bellinger so bad, because it's not going to cost us prospects. It's not going to cost us these top 5 packages. And the thing that's intriguing about Marte is, it's not a lot of money. It's not a lot of money in this day and age. I think Bellinger would probably cost us much more money. At least on a yearly basis. Maybe the contract length may not be 6 years, so maybe it'll be respectable. Total value might be equivalent. But again, that's why I'm looking for these more complete players, and I'm disregarding the age. I'm really disregarding the age right now, because I still think that the level of value that he has for 2026, 2027, he will still be playing at a high level. And that's with the window we're in right now. If you have a Lindor on your team, if you have a Juan Soto on your team, and I'm looking at like this, I'm looking at a 5-year window with Juan Soto minus the first year. So 4-year window. So the time is now. Who knows in 4 years if the Mets are willing to up Juan Soto's salary? They may just say bye bye and let him hit the market, or he may hit the market and the Mets say no, we don't want to increase it. And oh, let's see what happens. We got to see what happens. I mean, that's why I kind of like that creative contract that the Mets gave to Soto. But like we really got to see, and guys 31, 32, we'll see how Juan Soto ages, but we know right now he's an MVP type player, so you want to build this team around him and Lindor, and adding a guy like Marte is I do it in a second. So I mean, looking at the player, I want him. Looking at the contract, I'll take it. And the third thing, the only thing that I have to deal with is the prospect situation, and that is something that would prohibit me from making trade because we're not going to give up any stupid prospect packages for Morte. We're just not. We're just not. And it's also trade-offs too. Like I said, if this is going to prohibit you or take less capital away from your cabinet of prospects so that you can acquire elite pitching, then also that has to be heavily weighed into this equation. I believe David Stearns is smart enough to analyze this whole picture. Now, you heard from Adam Ottavino, former Met Adam Ottavino, our last video. Check it out. I notated that Adam Ottavino's latest comments, signal that he was a bit bitter. Former employee, and we had some great discussion in the comments on in people saying, well, you know what, you appreciate when players speak out, and you want to hear players what they have to say. But I'm all for that. I want players to feel comfortable, but this is a little different. This is a guy who's literally trashing, bad mouthing his management, his bosses, his superiors. He literally named his former bosses. And in terms of him being in the media, getting a job at SNY, getting a job wherever, I mean, I never felt that it was a wise decision to badmouth your former employers. It's one thing, like, a couple of people saying, well, the Mets analysts, they criticize the team. Well, I mean, that's, more or less their job to criticize the team. And that was a decent point. But if the broadcast criticizes their bosses, that's what Otto's doing. Otto's criticizing his bosses, his employers. So that is something that's usually a no-no, usually something people don't do, but Otto did. And, Otto said that he was upset. He said that he was annoyed. That's his words. He's annoyed. So stuff came out, probably in emotion, but still, he made it public. And, that is what it is. That is what it is. So again, was there a leadership gap in 2025? No doubt about it. No doubt about it. We saw virtually the same team the year before excel, especially when they were under duress. In 2024, I notated how the Mets, anytime they had a crisis or a situation, that propelled them to get better and stronger and made them tougher. Whereas in 2025, they wilted. So again, you got to get the right people in here. That's it. Are you going to evaluate Ketel Marte as that right person? I mean, that brings up one more thing. I think there was something. I'm trying to find it right now. I forgot. I apologize. There was something in the locker room where Marte, was going to leave. Something about a locker room thing. Wasn't too much with the specifics, but again, the Mets have to do their homework. Even if you heard something negative, I wouldn't say, hey, you know what? That's eliminate the guy. The guy's very talented. The Mets have to do their homework in terms of, hey, how is he going to fit with this group of guys? So again, Ketel Marte is an extremely interesting, intriguing scenario. Elite two-way offensive player, middle of the order impact guy. He's been very consistent. He's got a high ceiling. He's relatively cheap, secure, controllable contract. Um, and again, the major risk, injury risk, value, cost, trade capital, that's the big thing. And he's 32. I don't consider that really old, but is he going to decline? Is he going to decline? And roster construction, strategically, roster construction wise, I mean, Marte is a big win, big win. The guy could play multiple positions, contending window. He fits that. Financial commitment, again, not that much. Bottom line is there are more positives, in my opinion, than negatives. But again, that big negative, the trade package cost is a monumental one. So that could be a deal breaker. It could be a deal breaker. So let me know, what do you think about the Ketel Marte situation? Would you touch it with a 10-foot pole, or is it just a silly dream or scenario that you would not touch? I know the other day, another rumor that we addressed was the Brandon Nimmo for Mike Trout trade rumors. And I believe I was in with a lot of the majority in saying that Mike Trout is really kind of past the point where you'd want to acquire him and way too costly, even to give up a Brandon Nimmo. Brandon Nimmo is half the price, and Mike Trout is just too injury prone right now at this point. Older, not really what the Mets are looking, not really at all. So let me know what you think. I really appreciate all of your opinions, all of the feedback. I really do, from the bottom of my heart. Continue to hit the like button. Continue to subscribe. I appreciate each and every one of you. Have a great day, folks.